You are watching the New American Media. Live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Unhappy Hour, and welcome to Strictly Browns, a place where we talk about the Cleveland Browns, and we try to keep it strictly about the Cleveland Browns. Thank you for joining us here. My name is Brian Engelman. I will be your host for today's program. Thank you for finding us. If you're not following us on Twitter, please do so. We're at American_media_. And please check out our YouTube page, youtube.com/The New American Media. Once again, for these Friday shows, we are pleased to be joined with Brandon Odell. Brandon, how are you doing this afternoon, good sir?
Doing okay. Just ready for the weekend here, that's for sure.
Well, you know, I was really ready for last week, and I was excited to see a game. And it turns out the Cleveland Browns were able to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. They had that game, and they let it get away. What were your thoughts on the Eagles game?
Well, I think overall my thoughts on the game prior to it were pretty much dead on in the fact that, you know, if it was going to be a winnable game for them, it was going to be from the defense putting forth a good effort. I said if they were going to be able to beat the Eagles, it was going to be from getting to Michael Vick. If you can really get to him and put some pressure on him, then he'll make mistakes, and he made them on Sunday. And unfortunately, the offense wasn't able to capitalize.
Talk about the defense for a second, because we know that we're going to lose Joe Hayden now because he took Adderall for 4 games, you know, essentially 25% of this regular season. The defense was pretty remarkable. They did give up quite a few yards, but they bent, they didn't break, they didn't allow a lot of points. They had some pick sixes, DeQuell Jackson. Comment on this defense specifically, the effort that you saw against Michael Vick and the Eagles, and then kind of talk about how you think the Joe Hayden loss is going to affect him.
Well, I mean, overall, I think the defense came ready to play. They had their helmets strapped up. They were focused on what they needed to do. They knew the game plan, and they executed the game plan, while still acknowledging the fact that the defense has faults. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. They still gave up a 100-yard rushing performance, and they still gave up a 300-yard passing performance. You know, at the worst, you're only supposed to be able to give up one or the other on a given Sunday, and they gave up both. So let's not fool ourselves into thinking that this is the 2000 Baltimore Ravens here. The defense still leaves something to be desired as well, and you know, they showed it there at the end where, you know, if we were going to win the game, it was going to be by the defense winning it for us, and they weren't able to make a key play when they needed to either.
And you know what? The Browns defense almost did win it. So before we go on the other side of the football and talk about the offense for a second here, before we get to that, how about, what did you think out of the coaching? Because this is not the first time Pat Shurmur's allowed a fourth quarter win to turn into a loss. And what did you think about the special teams?
Well, coaching-wise, certainly, I mean, it's a tough call because you say that, he mismanaged some of the play calls and threw it when he should have run it to try to keep the clock going and stuff like that. But let's be honest, running it wasn't working either. And it didn't matter what play he called on Sunday because no plays were working. Trent Richardson wasn't getting the line wasn't getting any push. Trent Richardson wasn't able to find any holes. I don't think he was quite ready to really handle the load that he was given on Sunday. And Whedon was throwing incompletions, whether it was from his errors or from certainly there were some passes that were dropped, and certainly a couple of his interceptions maybe happened from his receivers making their mistakes as well. So, I mean, it's hard to put it strictly on the coaches. I completely understand where everyone's coming from saying that he has to figure out how to hold a fourth quarter lead, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's the players on the field that need to be able to convert first downs, and that Pat Shurmur can call a play And you know what? If Aaron Rodgers can make that play work, why can't any other quarterback in the league? It's because certain players just are better at executing than others, and that was the difference from that standpoint. So I don't necessarily blame the coaches for it. Special teams were great. Phil Dawson was doing well. I mean, you certainly thought that if they could have just somehow managed to give him a shot at another field goal, he would have hit it. And,
30 yards. Get him 35 yards, and you got a chance to walk out with a win. Yeah.
Josh Cribbs, returning punts and kickoffs, gave us some really nice field position. So really on two of the three sides of the ball, special teams and defense, I mean, we definitely played well enough to win. The turnovers that the defense caused, when you have five turnovers that you have, 5 turnovers that you've caused in a game, that should be a win for your team. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And the offense just did not make the plays that they needed to make. That's all there is to it. I don't blame the coaches, because at the end of the day, it's those players on the field that need to make things happen. Maybe Brandon Weeden wasn't as ready as he should have been, and maybe they should have considered. I mean, it's tough because 5 years ago, a player that is a first rounder that's picked at the end of the first round at a quarterback, it might not be starting until game 8 or 9 of his rookie season. But that's not the way that things are anymore. So Brandon Weeden needed to be ready to play, and he needed to have his head on straight. And for as much as he talked about being so mature and being so ready to go, he just wasn't.
Okay, so how long before you start thinking about Colt McCoy? At least with a little bit of experience under the system, with at least having a few of your, well, theoretically having your running back healthy, but he looked very ineffectual out there. Trent Richardson was ridiculously underwhelming rather, and we can talk about Ray Mataluga's comments because they're going to be facing the Bengals coming up here. I did not see much out of Trent Richardson, but how long do you think you should give Brandon Weeden before you put Colt McCoy in? Do you say just ride out the whole season? He's a 29-year-old first-round draft pick. Or do you say, all right, maybe he's not ready to be driving yet. Let him ride shotgun, let Colt steer this for a while, and then we'll bring him back later?
It's a tough call. I think if he has another game as bad as what it was last week, I think that you seriously need to consider the fact that he's not ready. If he has a game that's a little bit better but still poor this week, and he shows maybe 2 more games in a row after that at that poor level. So I would say by the quarter point of the season, if he's showing us nothing, then he needs to sit on the bench until he's ready to go.
Well, being 29 years old, it really changes the dynamics. It really changes. Well, yeah, let's make sure he's ready versus, come on, man.
But he's not a Ben Roethlisberger 29. He's a 29 that hasn't really ever, dealt with the injuries and the problems like that you go through being an NFL quarterback.
Okay, so, that's a good point.
I mean, look at a Kurt Warner. I think that's a pretty similar comparison. And honestly, Kurt Warner has played higher levels of football. I mean, maybe if you consider the playing in Arena League being maybe a little bit more advanced than playing in college football in terms of some of the competition. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's kind of a toss-up. But,
that's
I don't think that age
though.
is a reason
that's a good...
not to if he's not ready to play. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I could talk all day about this. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up with Cincinnati this week.
Before we do, I think you made a good point right there to kind of think about. Was Brandon Weeden more prepared through being on Oklahoma State, or was Kurt Warner more prepared having played in Arena League? It's really, because when you said that, I couldn't come up with a clear answer. I said, well, certain conferences, certain divisions, certain teams. I don't know. But yeah, you do raise a good point that if you're not ready, you're just not ready. And at some point, whether your age means you need to get in or whatever the case may be, you got to be ready. And I saw a stat that said his lifetime pitching stat, his ERA with the Yankees was right the same. I think his ERA was like 1 or 2 points higher than his quarterback rating of 5 point something. Yeah, I mean, that's astonishing that he had a quarterback rating of 5 and an ERA of 5, and it's It's just a little discouraging after this first game, but you're right. Let's look forward. Let's look at the Bengals. What progression?
I must say, what is more astonishing, that those two numbers were so similar, or that Abraham Lincoln's secretary was named Kennedy and Kennedy's secretary was named Lincoln?
Brandon, this is Strictly Browns. This should clearly be in the overtime section. No, that is
here.
That is funny. All right, so let's talk about the Bengals. An in-state rival, trying to get things moving in the right direction. What change do you expect to see at the quarterback position? Do you expect Whedon to get his act together? Do you expect another flop, or do you expect to see McCoy? What are you hoping to see, and what do you expect?
Today, or on Sunday, unless there's an injury. I don't know what to expect out of him, because no one expected what we saw. So I don't know. I frankly speaking, I can't tell what we're going to get out of him. I'd like to say that we're going to get some improvements. I'd like to say that he's not going to be as completely putrid as what we saw this past Sunday, but I don't know. I frankly don't know. It's hard to understand what to expect from a rookie quarterback anyway. And after what we saw on Sunday, I don't know. I mean, the physical tools are there. It's what's between the ears, I think, that is going to determine whether Brandon Whedon can play in this league or not.
Well, I remember watching him in the bowl game when they defeated Stanford. He came out right away, threw an interception, looked lousy. He came back, he went to overtime, he won that game. He beat Andrew Luck head-to-head. Maybe he's a slow starter and a strong, strong down the stretch. I used to think I was a really fast learner, but that's not quite it. I'm a little slower out of the gate, but I'm pretty strong down the stretch once I get it figured out. And let's hope we see the same thing out of Brandon Whedon that we saw against Stanford with the Cleveland Browns then. So what are you anticipating for the Cleveland Browns against the Bengals? What is the biggest threat you got to worry about? Is it Andy Dalton to A.J. Green? Is it their defense? What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, A.J. Green, everyone's talking about how he's ready to make that next step from being a rising star to being in that truly elite level here, even in his second year. So I think that it starts with him. And you had mentioned about Joe Hayden being out.
Right.
Certainly, his loss is going to be felt. But let's be honest with ourselves. A.J. Green was still able to affect both of those Bengals wins last year, and to be the deciding factor in both of those Bengals wins last year, even with Hayden on him. So, the Joe Hayden factor, that definitely hurts. But A.J. Green might be the type of player where he is going to get his one way or the other. Calvin Johnson's going to get his no matter who is on him. A.J. Green is not at the level of the Calvin Johnson just because of the fact that he doesn't have that much experience yet, but he has that kind of talent. Frankly speaking, I think A.J. Green, it starts with him. I don't think Andy Dalton is quite as good as what everyone is making him out to be. I don't think he's as good or has the potential to be as good as either of the other two top quarterbacks in the division. But I think he's a good quarterback. But he can be rattled, and I honestly would rather be playing the Bengals this week than playing the Eagles again. I can tell you that.
Well, you remember the Eagles quotes. They were really anxious to get out of Cleveland. I think that was Vic's exact line was, "I am ready to get out of Cleveland." He got smacked around by that defense. They really put a lot of pressure on him. Well, what's your prediction then? The in-state rivalry, Bengals versus Browns. What do you anticipate seeing?
Well, I would hope that we would be able to see a little bit more from the offense. I would hope that we're able to see something from Trent Richardson, because we really didn't get a chance to see much of him as far. We had that one play where he knocked Kurt Coleman, for the former Buckeye,
that was great.
Safety's helmet off, and apparently the crowd just went crazy.
That was great.
I would love to see Trent Richardson be able to really make an impact in this game, because with all the talk about Brandon Whedon, Trent Richardson was the number 3 overall pick in this draft. He was the player that was picked immediately after RG3. And there were a lot of prognosticators who said that Trent Richardson might be the most the truly best prospect out of all of the players in the NFL draft last year. So, I'm looking to see Trent Richardson be able to actually come out and control a game. And if he can do that, I think it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Whedon's shoulders. But I'm gonna be honest with you. Cincinnati is going to be mad after getting blown out by Baltimore. That's a total buzzsaw. You're there at the Art Modell game, memorial game on Monday Night Football against the Ravens, a team who is superior to any of the other teams in the division, in my opinion. That was definitely a tough draw for the Bengals, but they were embarrassed in the second half of that game, and that's the last thing that they have in their heads is how badly they played in that second half of that game. It's going to be a tall order, and Cincinnati's defense is good. I don't know if it's necessarily as good as what we faced with the Eagles, but it's a good defense, and I guarantee that everything that the Eagles threw at us, Cincinnati's going to be throwing the same exact thing. And Whedon, certainly, unless he shows the ability to be able to get things together, it might end up being another long day. I don't like to be pessimistic, but I like the Eagles, or I'm sorry, I like the Bengals in this one, and I think I think it might be another some more tough sledding for the Browns here. I'm thinking probably maybe 24-10, something like that. That's me not trying to be pessimistic, but to be realistic.
Well, my undefeated Super Bowl winning predictions are shot after the first week. It's always frustrating, but now I can move on. But I still have faith that they're going to get it completely turned around. I really do. I think Trent Richardson that I saw in college is an amazing player. I think Brandon Whedon is very good back there at quarterback. I know that we have a good offensive line. I know that we have some young developing wide receivers, and I think when it clicks, we might have started slow, but I think it's going to come back pretty strong, and I'll just go ahead and predict 24-17 Cleveland. Well,
that means that they're going to be putting some touchdowns on the board, so I think that would certainly be welcome to any Browns fan, because all this crapola about them not even being able to put it in the end zone, people have been fed up with that for a long time. And it's high time that they got something together as far as this offense goes. You can tell me Jimmy Haslam has put this team on notice, and they need to get it together. So
absolutely,
I certainly hope that you're right, and I hope that I'm wrong. I just don't know until I see something from Brandon Whedon that tells me that he can put the ball in the end zone, which he didn't show in the preseason and hasn't shown obviously so far in the regular season. It's hard for me to predict them to be able to beat a team that made the playoffs last season.
Well, you know what? The job has one task on the offensive side, and it's to score touchdowns. Field goals are not acceptable. Field goals are, I failed my job of a touchdown. Okay, you know what? It wasn't a complete loss. I got 3 points out of it. If you get 0, it is time to be replaced. That is not performing the job. If you're hired to do something and you don't do it, you need to be replaced. Whether you're mixing concrete or answering telephones or scoring touchdowns, either you do it or you need to be replaced. And you're right. I think Jimmy Haslam coming in saying, look, guys, this is my team now, and I'm not tolerating this. I don't know what you need to get your act together with, but now is your time because you're on the clock. I didn't hire you, and I'm here to hire a winner. And if you give me lousy product, I'm going to remove you. So final thought here, and I'll let you get going. Any comment on the Cleveland.com story in the Plain Dealer that Art Modell reportedly passed on an offer for a new stadium, and people are kind of revisiting history, trying to think about the Ravens and Art Modell and the legacy that this report is saying that he passed on an offer for a new stadium. Does that change your opinion in any way?
I'm going to kind of say the same thing that I said last week, which is, let sleeping dogs lie at this time. I mean, if you're really still that concerned and upset about the fact that Modell took the Browns out of Cleveland, it's time to move on. It's been 15 years or whatever at this point, and that team is gone. That team is in Baltimore. That team has won a Super Bowl. That team is a consistent Super Bowl contender the last few years. That's not the team that we root for anymore. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've always heard conflicting things. You hear some of these people saying what a great guy Art Modell was, and you hear about some of these people saying what a jerk he was with some of the stuff that he did. But you know what? He was a businessman, and I bet that there's a lot of businessmen that you can say that about. Just depends on what side of the business you were on when you dealt with that individual. So, I don't doubt it. It seems like Modell kind of had his mind made up for a while about that, and from everything that I'd heard, he had gotten himself into a bit of debt and had basically written checks that he couldn't cash. Pardon the pun there, or pardon the cliche. It was a sad situation when it happened. It's sad that we're still having to spend so much time, pining over this these days. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. If the Browns, the modern incarnation of the Browns, were a good, consistent football team, I'm not even saying we're as good as what the Ravens have been the last few years, but say that they're a good, consistent football team. Say that they're what the Houston Texans have been the last 3 or 4 years. Are we having this conversation? Are we looking back with anger and with wistfulness upon all of this, or do you think people would have a lot easier time moving on?
I would love to find out. I would love to become consistently competitive and winning and in the playoffs. I'd love to find out. I don't know. I get your point, though. I definitely get your point.
If it was a good team that we have gotten to root for instead, people wouldn't be quite so upset about all of it. That's for sure.
Well, let me wrap it up with this then. You know how every year, at least for the past 2 or 3 years, you and I we've talked Browns. I mean, ever since. I mean, for longer than a decade and a half, we've been talking about the Browns, you and I. And you know how every year recently, it seems like you can start counting. Well, remember that one game we almost won? Well, remember that other game that we should have won? Remember that other game that we could have won? And it's really like one play away. If the Browns intercepted that ball in the end zone on Mike Vick, it's over. Had they ruled that Mike Vick fumble was actually a fumble instead of a down by contact, we would have had the ball and could have run the clock out or put points up. There were at least 2 plays in that game where we could have easily won that game. So, as the season progresses, let's see if we can start winning those one-possession games as opposed to always saying, oh, we blew that game. We let that one get away. We snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory here, because I'm really getting tired of that broken record that we keep hearing as Cleveland Browns fans.
Yeah, I hear you. You know what, though? We have a couple of those games most years where we do win them when we probably should lose them as well. I mean, look at the Miami game last year. McCoy throws that touchdown with, about a minute left, and then basically the Miami marches right back down the field, and we stopped them on 4th down to be able to win it. So, there's definitely some of those games that we do everything in our power to lose and still manage to win as well. What I'm actually hoping for is the time when we start actually winning games convincingly, where we're actually up by more than 10, more than a touchdown. Maybe we're up by 10 or 14 points.
Wouldn't that be great?
With 5 minutes left in the 4th quarter.
A little cushion.
Trying to eke out these wins by 1 or 2 points.
Well, and I know that we talk strictly Browns, but one of these get-togethers we need to talk about the Buckeyes, because there are some promising signs. There's some growing pains for sure, but it's nice to see an undefeated Ohio State Buckeye team down in Columbus, and with Urban Meyer getting the program back together after the Tressel fiasco. There is a decent football product in between Cleveland and Cincinnati known as the Buckeyes. So let's not lose sight of that, and let's get to that later. So that's all I got for today, Brandon. We will wish you farewell. Do you have any final words for everybody?
Nope, I'll leave him with what I normally do. Go Browns.
Go Browns. Thank you, Brandon. That was Brandon Odell joining us again. He's a regular contributor here at the New American Media when it comes to Browns, the Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Football Browns. It's like they used to say, the New York Football Giants. I love that old-timey voice in all those recordings. It's very funny. But, yeah, Brandon joins us. We talk about the Browns, and truly this is a game that the Browns defense had played almost well enough to win. That final interception that they could have had in the end zone really allowed the Eagles to get back into it and eventually win the game. So it is unfortunate, but we have got to get better quarterback play, better line play, better wide receiver play, better running back play if we want to win games. There's no doubt about it. So for everybody here at the TNAM Radio Network, part of the NewAmericanMedia.com, want to remind you, please follow us on Twitter. We're at American_media_. Like our page on Facebook, The New American Media. And please consider subscribing to youtube.com/The New American Media. My name's Brian Engelman. Thank you for listening to Strictly Browns here on the Unhappy Hour, part of thenewamericanmedia.com.
Follow thenewamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.
This is the New American Media. Agree to disagree. Yeah, it's a radio show we have on thenewamericanmedia.com every single Friday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Join the show. What do we talk about? Politics, religion, and spirituality. Basically anything you're not supposed to talk about in a bar. You're not supposed to have these conversations inside of a bar, but we have them every single Friday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific on thenewamericanmedia.com. Join the show, offer your opinion, and let's agree to disagree, but let's have a good conversation.
Have you ever considered adopting a pet to be part of your family? Our animal companions can be just as close to us as our human companions. If you're considering adoption, please visit your local shelter and adopt a pet today. Shelter pets make the best pets.
Hi, Brian from thenewamericanmedia.com. Last year I had this idea. I wanted to start a website of my own, not just something, a presence on Twitter, a presence on Facebook, and have a thing. I wanted a website. I wanted a home base for all of the ideas and things I'm interested in. I wanted live radio. I wanted to communicate with the globe. I was tired of being spoon-fed dogma by corporate interests and just, here, believe this, believe this. I said, no, I think there's something underneath the surface, but I didn't know how to do it. So I contacted Ted Distel of DistelDesign.com. Ted walked us through the process of, okay, you want videos, you want to do quotes of the day, you want to have a spiritual section, you want to have a 1984 watch where government's intruding and private corporations are intruding into your privacy. Yeah, those are the things that I was interested in. Ted walked me through the process. We built thenewamericanmedia.com, and I encourage you to go online and take a look at our site. That's what he's capable of. Please, if you have an idea, go to disteldesign.com. That's DISTEL design.com. TNAM Radio, because the news always matters. Hi, Brian from thenewamericanmedia.com. You know, this housing crisis that we've been in for a few years now has really taken a toll on a lot of families. I know somebody you've worked with, somebody that you're related to, maybe even yourself. You might have gone through some sort of foreclosure, short sale, deed in lieu of foreclosure, or any other nonsense going on in the financial markets tied to housing. One of the things that is not talked about enough is the fact that a lot of people have to get rid of their homes right now and go into some sort of apartment-style living. And in that situation, many people can't bring their cat or dog, their friend, their companion, a member of their family. Imagine your dog, imagine your cat, dropped off at a shelter. Oh, it's a shelter. They'll be safe. No, the shelters just don't have the resources capable to take care of these animals, and thousands of them are put to death every single week. Please, if you have the opportunity, go become a foster parent at a shelter. Go to your local shelter, adopt a dog or cat. Trust me, a family out there is going to really appreciate the effort. If you're tired of the other stuff, take a look at thenewamericanmedia.com. Be sure that you go on to facebook.com and do a quick search for The New American Media and like our page, because we like it when you do that.